I know that this channel is primarily focused on exposing egregious misinformation in the public eye, but it brings me no great satisfaction to address and investigate and possibly debunk today's topic, turbo cancer. I've danced around it. I've addressed many similar anti-vaccine conspiracy theories that have cropped up in the years since COVID-19 first appeared. But I've stayed away from turbo cancer for one reason and one reason only. Not because it's real, but because it's an awesome name, and I'm really sad that anti-vaxxers took it. The first time I heard the word or words or hyphenated phrase turbo cancer, I was in love. I knew that when I eventually get cancer, genetics and luck willing, I don't want it to be aggressive or stage 4. No, I want it to be turbo, because putting turbo in front of anything automatically makes it sound rad. It's pretty much the reason why I bought a Mini Cooper S for my first car, because it had a turbocharger, and that goes vroom vroom when I want to impress hot chicks at a stoplight. The only thing turbo can't make cooler is TurboTax, which is evil, and I would like to petition Congress to force them to rename it to just regular tax. In a way, turbo cancer really is like a cooler variation of cancer because it doesn't exist, so you can't actually get it. It's a term made up by anti-vaxxers who were sure that the mRNA COVID-19 vaccine would lead to a domino effect of immune suppression and cellular malfunction, resulting in a horrifically speedy and deadly form of cancer. There is, of course, negative data for this, in that there's no evidence that this is happening. There's no evidence from early trials that it was happening. There's no known mechanism for it happening without COVID-19 itself also being a carcinogen, which it is not. And in the years since a worldwide vaccination campaign, there has been no noticeable increase in cancer rates. And yet, in the past few weeks, I've seen a noticeable increase in people with blue checks on Shitter proclaiming that there is now ample evidence to conclude that mRNA vaccines do cause turbo cancer. And as someone who's received like a dozen vaccines and boosters at the time of this recording, it's only a matter of time before I too succumb to that raddest of diseases, turbo cancer. This recent uptick in turbo cancer true believers is mostly due to a new study published a few weeks ago in the journal Curious. Curious is a journal that is well known for taking a fast and loose approach to preprint peer review, preferring instead to just approve papers in a day or so and then have other people evaluate the studies once they're published, which is why they're pretty famous now for just constantly retracting shit. Like that time that they had to retract 56 papers all at once that all came from students of one Saudi Arabian university that required medical interns to publish anything, anywhere before getting into a postgrad residency. It took them 2 years to retract those papers. And at least several of the authors had no idea that they had even been published there. None of this should be surprising, of course, seeing as Curious published their first issue before they even had a peer review their name for spelling or for not looking dumb as hell. Anyway, this new study is called Increased Age-Adjusted Cancer Mortality After the Third mRNA Lipid Nanoparticle Vaccine Dose During the COVID-19 Pandemic in Japan. And the good news is that the entire thing is available in full online for anyone to read and critique. After all, that's the point of Curious. Throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And in this case, the open access means that all of us can go over there and see a pile of limp, undercooked pasta lying on the floor. The authors write, in Japan, no significant excess mortality was observed during the first year of the pandemic, 2020. However, some excess cancer mortalities were observed in 2021 after mass vaccination with the first and second vaccine doses doses, and significant excess mortalities were observed for all cancers and some specific types of cancer, including ovarian cancer, leukemia, prostate cancer, lip, oral, pharyngeal cancer, pancreatic cancer, and breast cancer after mass vaccination with the third dose in 2022. Now, because you are a subscribed fan of this channel, and therefore you are very smart and also good looking, you immediately realize that this paper presents a correlation between deaths from cancer and vaccine timing, but no evidence of causation. For every U.S. presidential election between the years of 1940 and 2000, every time the Washington, D.C. football team won its final home game of the season, the incumbent won the presidency, and when the team lost, the incumbent lost. This is an example of a very strong correlation which has absolutely no evidence of causation. Hell, there's not even a really good candidate for a confounding factor that might be impacting each of these outcomes, though I would absolutely love to read your hypotheses in the comments. In this turbocancer study, okay, the authors never actually use the word turbocancer, but I just like saying it. And also, the obvious end goal of the authors is to support the turbocancer conspiracy theory. In this turbocancer study, there is a pretty obvious confounding factor. The fucking pandemic. People who have cancer are pretty famously unhealthy, and they're at the hospital a lot, where there are lots of other people with communicable diseases like COVID-19. So it's not exactly crazy to suspect that more people with cancer are going to die during a global pandemic than when there is no global pandemic, right? And the lack of excess deaths in the first year of the pandemic might easily be explained by the fact that Japan locked down when the pandemic started and they didn't open back up until vaccines were available, meaning that the pandemic didn't truly hit them until 2021. And thanks to the vaccines, transmission didn't even spike until Omicron hit in 2022. So, there's a pretty good explanation for this correlation that doesn't involve a magical means of mRNA vaccines causing turbocancer. But I've gone and buried the lead here because in reality, this study didn't even find a correlation. I know, I read that excerpt to you from the abstract and it sure made it sound like they found a correlation, but when we look at the actual data they used, we start to notice some funny business. For instance, there is no excess cancer mortality year over year in Japan during the pandemic. The age-adjusted number of cancer deaths has been steadily dropping for many years now, and during the pandemic, that continued. The researchers' own data show that this number leveled off between 2020 and 2021 before continuing to drop in 2022. Those are their own numbers, but over on Dr. Susan Oliver's channel, Back to the Science, she points out something I didn't realize. Other researchers have taken the exact same data and found very different results.
Here's the thing, though. Other authors have done the same calculation and got different results. This paper is published in BMJ Open, another journal which is more reputable than Curious. They've also looked at age-standardised mortality for cancer. And guess what? They don't show the age-standardised death rate flatlining after 2020. They show it continuing to decline in 2021 for both men and women, although the curve is clearly a lot flatter all over for women. And this paper was published before the 2022 data was available, so we don't know whether those results would have also been inconsistent with the Curious article or not.
I recommend you watch her entire video if this topic interests you because she goes into way more detail on the shenanigans that these researchers got up to. And she tears an anti-vaccine YouTuber a new asshole and she pets an adorable dog while she does it. So, I mean, that's just a win-win-win in my book. Back in early 2020, I was confident that by 2024, we would have the excess mortality data for scientists to examine and to adjust for confounding factors and to then use that data to know with some degree of certainty how many people have died because of COVID-19. And I was right. You know, we do have those things. I was also right that this data would show that COVID caused a great amount of damage and that the numbers would also show that the eventual vaccine would save lives. What I didn't appreciate at the time was anti-vaccine scientists manipulating that same data to show the opposite of what it shows, and then publishing it in predatory, poorly managed journals for COVID-denying anti-vaccine lay people to take as gospel. So, trust the science, but make sure it's actually science first. Turbo science, maybe? Is that a thing we could adopt? No, probably not. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.